Yo, guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay. We're having a hell of a day in the world of news, in the world of news and politics, as President Joe Biden steps down and declines the offer to run for president of the United States for a second term in 2024. Now, I want to spend a special shout out to my home co-host Lisa, who told me about this. I didn't even know this was happening until she told me about it. And she showed me the letter that Joe Biden wrote. Joe Biden apparently wrote this letter, and I'm going to read the letter to you guys here on the air. Just a sec. Former President Joe Biden writes, over the past 3.5 years, we have made great progress as a nation. Today, America has the strongest economy in the world. We've made historic investments in rebuilding our nation, in lowering the cost of prescription drugs, and in expanding affordable health care to a record number of Americans. We provided critical need care to 1 million veterans and exposed to toxic substances, passed the first gun safety law in 30 years, appointed the first African American woman to the Supreme Court, and passed the most significant climate legislation in the history of the world. America has been better positioned to lead than we are today. Has never been better positioned to lead than we are today. I know none of this could have done without you, the American people. Together we gather to overcome a once in a century pandemic and the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. We've protected and preserved our democracy, revitalized and strengthened our allies in the world. It has been the greatest honor of my life to serve you as president, and it has been my intention to while it has been my intention to seek re-election, I believe it is in the best interest of the party and the country for me to stand down and focus solely on fulfilling my duties as president for the remainder of my term. I will speak to the nation later this week with more details about my decision. For now, let me express my deepest gratitude to all those who have worked so hard to see me reelected. I want to thank Vice President Kamala Harris for being an extraordinary partner in all this work. And let me express the heartfelt appreciation to the American people for the faith and trust that you have placed in me. I believe today, as I always have, that there is nothing Americans can't do when we do it together. We have to just remember we are the United States of America. And that is Joe Biden's letter to the American people as a letter of resignation. Hey, Lisa, what's going on? I just read the entire thing. Um, what do I think of it? I think a lot of it is true. Some of it is hyperbole, guys. Let's be honest. We don't have. He got the economy the best way he could. That's true to address that point. Um, to address the point of Ketanji Brown Jackson, the first African American Supreme Court justice, that's true. To address the point of um, strengthening our relationship with our allies, that's not true. A lot of our allies and us are on shaky relationships with us since he's been president. You know what I mean? So that right there, that's the point where I shake my head and go, no, that's not true, Joe. You know what I'm saying? Some of our allies, I mean, it depends on what you consider strengthening our allies means. To me, I look at our allies like France, Britain, Canada, Israel, Australia, New Zealand. Those allies are fine. They ain't going anywhere despite who's president. They're always going to be on our side. But in our allies in more contentious parts of the world, like Ukraine and Israel, if you consider giving them more money to engage in their illegal and, well, in the Ukraine's case, not illegal, but in Israel's case, illegal and expansive war, or to giving Ukraine money to defend against a partner that we have no business being in that part of the world, because historically, Russia does have claims to certain parts of the Ukraine because it was Russia that gave it to the Ukrainians, after all. So I would consider that to be, as the kids would say, cap. You know what I mean? That part is not true. The other stuff, yes, it's true. And I'm getting quite sick of them using this line, oh, the greatest recession since the Great Depression. Although, wasn't that 2008? You know what I mean? You were vice president then, Joe. The economic crisis that we went to post-COVID was nothing compared to the Great Depression or even the bursting of the housing bubble in 2008. Okay, this is Trump's response to what President Joe Biden said. Crooked Joe Biden was not fit to run for president and is certainly not fit to serve and never was. He only attended the position of president. He only attained the position of president by lies, fake news, and not leaving his basement. All those around him, including his doctor and the media, knew that he wasn't capable of being president. And he wasn't now. Now, look at what he's done with our country, with millions of people coming across the border totally unchecked and unvetted, many from prisons, mental institutions, and record numbers of terrorists. We will suffer greatly because of his presence. We will remedy the damage he has done very quickly. Make America great again! Exclamation point. Well, Trump's response, you can't argue with it. Some of it is true. We do have record numbers of illegal immigrants streaming across our borders. They are unchecked and unvetted. There is more terrorism in the world now than there was when Donald Trump left office. Because of the Gaza situation, which Biden unilaterally and by the Biden administration unilaterally supported. So by Biden saying that our allies are strengthened in the world, if that's a wink and a nod towards Israel, then yes, he's right. Our allies are stronger in the world. But is that a good thing? I would say no. I would say that our constant involvement in the Middle East, which both Trump, Biden, and Obama, and George Bush, and Bill Clinton have, and George H.W., going back that far, have all gotten involved with, is the main reason why terrorists hate us and attack us. It isn't because of our freedoms. It isn't because of any other BS that either party wants to think it is. The truth of the matter is, Biden's letter was filled with a bunch of lies. Trump's letter, or Trump's tweet rather, was filled with a lot of truth. You might not like Trump, but his tweet was filled with a lot of truth. Biden, okay. Lisa saying, in regards to the work stuff, people literally couldn't work in 2020 because of the irresponsibility of Trump with COVID. So I think this was worse than 2008. Maybe so, but we didn't go into an economic depression, at least because a lot of people had online jobs. right? And on top of that, many state governments, and including the federal government, chose to prolong the quarantine period longer than they had to. You know what I mean? They chose to not open up states. Uh, they chose to prolong the period of quarantine, which forced businesses to do what they had to do. Had they, had, I'm not saying, you know, that it was all Biden's fault. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just saying that line of, oh, this is the greatest, or this is the worst depression since, this is the worst economic recession since the Great Depression, is an overused trope at this point. I know, I know. Lisa's saying that was under Trump, not Biden. But I'm not saying that Biden, again, Lisa, I'm not saying that Biden caused it. I'm saying the use of that phrase is overdone. It's like saying somebody's Hitler. Saying somebody's Hitler, I mean, come on, really. Do we have to keep pulling back references from the 1930s and 40s to understand the gravitas of the situation the way it is? You know what I mean? No, the Great Depression was the Great Depression. World War II was World War II. None of these guys are going to be looked at in history the way that FDR was, because none of these guys had to face the kind of crises that FDR had to face. You know what I mean? It's completely different, right? If you would have said the worst epidemic or the worst pandemic since the Spanish flu in the early 1900s, you know, post World War I would have been like, okay, yeah, that's true, right? But he went immediately into something that he knew would position himself in the same limelight as FDR, which is what all these Democrats are chasing. They're chasing the FDR trophy in the same way that the Republicans are chasing the Ronald Reagan trophy. All the Democrats in history want to be perceived as like the next FDR, and all the Republicans want to be perceived as the next Ronald Reagan. You know, Trump is a lot closer to being the next Ronald Reagan than Biden was to being the next FDR. Now, he left out a couple of things that Trump put in there, and they both left this one out. The fentanyl epidemic, the killing or the mass suicides and the mass addictions in our country due to fentanyl, due to the border crisis. The bigger thing is not immigration, in my opinion, but the bigger thing is these drug cartels smuggling fentanyl across our borders that are harming our people. Right? This is on the level with the crack epidemic of the 1980s. Of course, I would say that the crack epidemic was even worse, and they paid less attention to it because the crack epidemic affected minorities, black and brown, in urban areas, whereas the fentanyl epidemic affects rural white people, J.D. Vance's people. But nobody's talking about that either, you know. But Joe Biden was a president. Now, Trump had another tweet, the one that I didn't read, where he came out and he said, Joe Biden is the worst president in the history of the United States. That I got to disagree with Trump on. Joe Biden is not the worst president in the history of the United States. That would still go to Franklin Pierce and Herbert Hoover. And James Buchanan. James Buchanan and Franklin Pierce were the two presidents that preceded Abraham Lincoln, which did nothing to quell the unrest between North and South, which inevitably led to the Civil War. And Herbert Hoover preceded FDR, and he did nothing to quell the economic crisis that befell us during the Great Depression. So I would say those are the two worst presidents ever. Joe Biden doesn't even come close. But is Joe Biden one of the worst modern presidents? He says she would have thought Trump would have been humble considering what happened to him last week. No, it only emboldened him. He got up, he got right up, police, and he said, "Fight, fight, fight." This guy Trump is going to try to turn this around into Joe Biden trying to kill him. I know he is. He's gonna be flipped around that Joe Biden and the deep state tried to kill him. Set him up somehow. Because he's like Tupac right now. Remember when Tupac got shot outside of Quad Studios in 1995, and he heard Who Shot Ya came out? Who Shot Ya was produced before Tupac got shot, but Tupac used it to try to manipulate the argument that Biggie and Biggie's people and Bad Boy were behind his murder. So Trump will try to do the same thing. Trump will say, it was the Democrats that set me up. It was the deep state that set me up. Not naming Biden by name, but just saying, implicating or implying, rather, that Joe Biden was responsible for his assassination attempt. And Republicans will believe it because they believe anything. A lot of them are conspiracy theorists. And we'll be hearing about the Trump attempted assassination for the next 40 or 50 years, the way that we've heard about the Kennedy assassination for the last 60 years. Uh, it's bad for Kamala. He says, what do I think about him dropping out, being only 4 months until the election? It's bad for Kamala because, for the most part, during her term as vice president, Kamala has played the background. She hasn't done really much of anything. The things that she has been in charge of, like the border crisis, she failed miserably at. So here's a person that she's getting ready to, if she were to win hypothetically, she's getting ready to assume the highest office in the land. And we have no idea how she would govern, right? Uh, we have no idea how she would govern. So it's bad for her because, not to mention, she is highly unlikable within her own community, the community, like Lisa said, that she needs to vote for her. She's not going to get those Obama votes of being a historic black woman because she doesn't stand solidly by her, and her record doesn't stand solidly by the black community. So, and the fact that she claimed she was Indian when she was first running in politics, she only claimed her Indian side. As far as women, I don't know. I don't really know how women voters feel. Women voters turned on Hillary Clinton in 2016, so I wouldn't really trust them. So, depending on who her VP is, it will be depending on if she wins. He says right, and the news said something about money funding, but they don't know what's going to happen with that. Yeah, I mentioned this before it happened. Exactly, Lisa. That Biden is going to drop out of the race, and we're going to get Kamala Harris because it was obvious his mental state is not was not up to par when he ran for president 4 years ago. He won on the strength of anybody but Trump. Trump had fucked up so bad they were willing to vote anybody in, and they voted in Biden, who was senile at that point. His health hadn't progressed to the point that it would later progress, but it progressed pretty far. But yes, Kamala Harris's record with the black community is atrocious due to her serving as the Attorney General in the state of California, where she locked up a historic number of black individuals. So all Trump has to do is say, well, I made the First Step Act, right? I gave inmates a chance. I push an initiative to rehabilitate inmates while you were locking them up. And here's what Trump likes to do, like he did in the debate. We didn't talk about the debate, but Lisa and I did privately. And Lisa brought up black jobs. He wants to pit African Americans against African American and Hispanic Americans against these mostly Hispanic migrants coming in. So what he said was, they're taking away black and Hispanic jobs. Now, this was his pathetic, lame attempt to appeal to the black and Hispanic demographic. So what he'll do in the debates with Kamala the next debate they have, is he'll say, I put out the First Step Act. I pardoned the likes of Harry O, the founder of Death Row Records. I pardoned the likes of Lil Wayne. I did this and that for criminal justice reform that directly affects the black and Hispanic community, whereas you locked up members of the black and Hispanic community, thus diminishing her credentials in an already wounded relationship that she has with the black voter base that the Democratic Party desperately needs to win. Because that's been the strategy. That's the strategy of the Trump campaign, is trying to win Hispanic and black voters from the Democratic Party over to the Republican Party by using economic incentives, like when he collaborated with Ice Cube on the Platinum Plan, using the First Step Act, which he collaborated with Kim Kardashian on, and using faces like Amber Rose and others to try and get in good with the black and Hispanic community, because he knows that Kamala Harris, is considered bougie. She's considered out of touch, and her record as the Attorney General speaks volumes against her for those in the black community. And since she's been Vice President of the United States since 2020, in the past 4 years, she's done nothing to repair that. Nothing to repair her relationship with that black voter base that she desperately needs. Now, women, I don't know what she's done with the women base. She has not really been that vocal about the overturn of Roe v. Wade and women's reproductive rights. She said nothing about it, basically, beyond the regular platitudes that every Democratic politician says. So she's not good on that. You know what I mean? So, and with voters of all races of a lower economic status, she might not be good with that. You know what I mean? So, I don't know. And she's not a good debater. That's another thing. Her debates last election cycle with Mike Pence and okay, I'm wrong. Lisa says she spoke out a lot against the overturn. See, I don't know about women's issues. I don't really look into women's issues. Lisa, a female, knows more than I do. I know when it comes to black issues, zero. Nothing on black issues at all. And she's, like I said, she's not a good debater. Her debate skills with Mike Pence 4 years ago, they weren't great. So if you couldn't get it done with Mike Pence 4 years ago, you definitely had to step it up when it comes to Trump. Because we see how he debates. He's vicious. He's a very, very good debater. With the tactics he uses. Of course, he says the debate she had with Mike Pence last election cycle was good. To me, I think it wasn't. At least my opinion, it wasn't. It was subpar. He was coming at her strong, and she wasn't coming at him equally as strong back then. Maybe she's gotten better. Hopefully she has. Hey, I want to see her win. You know what I mean? But I'm just saying it's all going to depend on her healing those kind of relationships that she's lost within the black community and who she picks as her running mates. Now, here's the thing me and Lisa were debating. Lisa says no. Lisa says the country is not ready for this person. But I think this person is the perfect match for J.D. Vance. Because other than him being gay, this person's background is like J.D. Vance's. Pete Buttigieg. Both men are millennials. Both men come from the Midwest, a region that both parties need, with a lot of swing states, Indiana and Ohio respectively. Both men are military men. Both men have a charismatic way of speaking and an interesting story. The only difference is that serves in Buttigieg's favor is Buttigieg has been the mayor of a major city, whereas J.D. Vance has not. J.D. Vance has never held an executive position in his life, never a political position before being elected to Senate 2 years ago. And Buttigieg is gay. Now, that may be the only thing going against Pete Buttigieg as being the potential running mate of Kamala Harris. Now, a lot of people are saying, scrap the Buttigieg and don't pick him, pick Gretchen Whitmer. Now, I don't know Gretchen Whitmer all that much. I don't live in Michigan, so I would have to look up her credentials. All I do know is that she was kidnapped by crazy Trumpers during the 2020 election last cycle. But is a double female ticket a little bit too much for the American people? Two females. What do you guys say? I would have to, again, look at Gretchen Whitmer's record. I know she's a Midwesterner, and that's really what they're going for. They're going for that Midwestern ticket. Because, at least, because those are the states they need. Remember, those states, Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Pennsylvania, those Rust Belt states, those were the states that cost those were the states that cost uh, Hillary Clinton in the 2016 election. And those were also the states that flipped. They voted for many of these states voted for Obama in 2012. They voted for Trump in 16, and they flipped to Biden in 20. So they flipped back and forth. They're like pancake states. So these are the states that both parties are really looking for. They're not really looking for California and New York because the Democrats have those in the bag. They're not really looking for the South because the Republicans have the South in the bag. What they're really going for is these Midwestern states that have, in the last 3 or 4 elections, have flipped back and forth like pancakes. This is why Trump chose J.D. Vance, because J.D. Vance is from Ohio. He has those Midwestern values. He understands how how the movement of factories overseas has affected those states that depend on factory work. You know, the states like Michael Jackson's home state, Gary, Indiana, Detroit, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, the Rust, like I said, the Rust Belt states. How that's impacted them on a negative level. He articulates that in his book as he and his family went through that in real time during the 90s and the 2000s. How the shipping of those jobs overseas negatively impact working class whites in those regions. He understands that. Buttigieg does as well. Buttigieg also, like I said, a millennial, both in their 30s. Also, his family, South Bend, Indiana, they've been impacted by them. Gretchen Whitmer, I'm sure she has. She's a Midwestern governor. She knows better than even those two. And she's held executive office. Because you need that. You know what I'm saying? You need to solidify the ticket. Kamala's the coastal elite. If she picks another coastal, people say Gavin Newsom. That's too strong California. That's too far left. People are not going to vote for that. You know what I mean? People have seen how Gavin Newsom mismanaged his state in the past couple of years. And even Ron DeSantis called him out on it. If she flings too far to the left, a ticket with her and Newsom, that's a super duper liberal ticket. That's not going to go anywhere with Midwesterners. And even the states that kind of flip kind of purplish, like Arizona or Georgia, that's not going to go anywhere with them. That's too liberal. She don't want to go in that direction. She wants to go with a Midwesterner, a white Midwesterner that shares semi-conservative values, that can articulate semi-conservative values with a liberal spin on it, not something too far left. A balanced ticket, basically. Okay, here's another person I've heard of. Jasmine Crockett. Now, Jasmine Crockett, no good. 2 African American women. Probably Crockett's she's from Dallas, right? I don't know how conservative she is, but that's two African American. That's not gonna work. You know what I mean? 2 black women. No. You could just see the jokes now from right-wing trolls online. You know, 2 Shaniquas take over the government. ready to set up a hair and weave salon in the White House or some shit like that. You can hear the jokes now if that's the case. Sad to say, but that's America. So Jasmine Crockett, the representative from Dallas, nope, I don't see that as an option. In a dream world, yeah. Now, my choice was it. Even Lisa yelled at me because again, it's just like with Jasmine Crockett. In a perfect world, here's who I want. In a perfect world, I want Michelle Obama. But I know even that's not going to happen. That's on my wish list, but that's impossible. Because Michelle Obama will give it to J.D. Vance. She'll give it to Trump. She's a great debater. She's highly political. She's charismatic. She's likable. But she doesn't want to do it, number one. And number two, again, too black. One day, we'll come to a ticket where, and she's American, and she's not white at all. Michelle Obama's not even mixed, which we've never had. You know what I mean? So we're not there yet, guys. Unfortunately, that's my dream team, but I know it's just a dream for now. If Kamala wants to win, she has to pick somebody white and somebody from middle America to win. And maybe Gretchen Whitmer is that choice. Maybe not Buttigieg. Buttigieg is gay. Like, that's the only thing that works against him. If Buttigieg was straight, Buttigieg be the perfect guy because he's basically J.D. Vance. He could be the liberal J.D. Vance. Like I said, Midwesterner, millennial, military service. They have everything in common except one's gay and one's straight. Yeah, but Lisa says it's a shame. But in an age, Lisa, where one of the hot button debates are trans rights, and things of that nature, you don't want to run the risk of putting a gay man in office. And again, the African American community, I have to say the African American community is uniquely homophobic because I love when white people do that. I hate when white people do that, but it's funny when white people do that because they'll always try to, when they want to project their own homophobia onto the black community, they'll say, well, the most homophobic community in America is the black community. I mean, look at how gay people are treated in the black community, completely ignoring their own instances of homophobia and their own feelings towards homophobia because it's not really the black community out here complaining about drag queen story hour. It's white conservatives, but they want to take the heat off themselves, so they pinpoint the black community. They point to countries outside of the United States that have nothing to do with the foundational black American community, like Uganda and Jamaica, that have homophobic laws. They do the same thing with anti-Semitism and anti-Asian hate. This guy in Atlanta goes into this incel in Atlanta. Remember, we talked about it on the channel. Remember, me and Lisa had the debate on it. I said it was a predominantly incel thing. She said it was racial, that he attacked those Chinese masseuses because they were Asian. Well, whatever it was, this white crazy guy goes into a massage parlor owned by Asian Americans, shoots up a bunch of Asians, hashtag Asian hate becomes a hashtag, and then all of a sudden, black people become the face of anti-Asian violence. And the news can't stop showing instances of black teenagers attacking Asians, making it out to seem like black teenagers were the ones that started this Asian hate spree, when it really was white. It was the white people, right? But all of a sudden, black teens become The face of it, anti-Semitism too. The Tree of Life Synagogue was shot up by a white guy. The Poway Abad House was shot up by a white guy. But all of a sudden, the news can't stop showing instances of Hasidic Jews in New York being attacked by young black teens, not really realizing that the attacks against Asians or Hasidic Jews or any other immigrant group are crimes crimes of economics, right? They're robbing them. They're not robbing them because they're Asian. They're not robbing them because they're Jewish. They're not attacking them because they're Asian or Jewish. They're attacking them because they don't have money and they presume that the Asian and the Jewish person does. So it's not technically a hate crime because they would attack a perceived wealthy black person in the same way, right? They're crimes of economic opportunity. They're not crimes of racial prejudice, right? But the news makes it out to be that so they could demonize black teens or make them the face of anti-Semitism, make them the face of homophobia, make them the face of anti-Asian hate. Meanwhile, all the killings against gays, against Asians, and against Jewish people come from white folks, not blacks. Black people are not going up into synagogues or Asian masseuse parlors or gay nightclubs shooting up people, right? In the name of homophobia, anti-Semitism, or anti-Asian hate. So stop with that. You know? And just like with sexism, you got podcasts like Fresh and Fit and Sneeko, right? Or rallies. Oh, black people are the most anti-Semitic group in America, according to the Anti-Defamation League, right? That it's black folks straight up attacking all Jewish people, right? But no, again, these are crimes of economic opportunity. They would rob the person if they was Asian. They would rob the person if they was black. They would rob the person if they was Spanish. They would rob the person if they was gay, straight. If they appear richer, and you got ask anybody that's from the hood, they'll tell you. Don't go up in the hood rocking jewelry. Don't go up in the hood rocking new sneakers. You might get robbed. Now, does that have anything to do with race? No, that's because the people in that area are economically deprived and they want what you got. It has nothing to do with them being Jewish or them being Asian or them being gay. They don't think like that. They don't give a fuck about that. You do, because you're homophobic, anti-Semitic, and anti-Asian, so you think other people think like you. But people in the hood don't think like that. Trust me, they don't. They don't care. Some of them don't even know what anti-Semitism is. Did you see that scene from Straight Outta Compton where they're listening to No Vaseline and the Jewish manager, Jerry Heller's getting all upset? Oh, this is anti-Semitism. This is blatant anti-Semitism, he tells NWA. And MC Ran, I think, or EZ looks at him, Jerry, don't nobody fucking know what anti-Semitism is. They don't care about things like that. But the right wing somehow twisted around to make young black teens the face of all this hatred. You know what I mean? So if she picks Buttigieg and she don't get elected because she has Buttigieg, what will happen is the white community won't, the white conservatives won't vote for her because she's, she has a gay guy that's gay married on her ticket as a vice president, but they'll blame it on the black community. They'll say, oh, well, it was the black community's homophobia that cost her the election. And meanwhile, it wasn't even that. You know what I'm saying? It was the white community. Just like with Prop 8. Proposition 8, I think it was a state law in California banning gay marriage. Right at that time, 2008, it it didn't pass, and people said, "Oh, it was because a lot of black voters came out in droves to vote for Barack Obama, and when they came out in droves to vote for Barack Obama, they also voted for this." Meanwhile, they come to find out that wasn't even the case. It was largely Mormon voters, white Mormon voters, that voted this down, not the African American community. Am I saying that the African American community, there's no homophobia in it? Of course, I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that there's a lot of white homophobia that you don't really see. You know what I'm saying? The white conservatives try to make black people the face of homophobia. It's just like the Pulse nightclub shooting. Trump used that to his advantage because Omar. Right, right. Lisa says Kamala Harris is going to bring a project. Yeah, she could run on that. She could definitely run on that. And that would get black folks, if black folks really look into it, that would get her behind. I feel like all she got to do is win the black vote. You know what I'm saying? All she got to do is really win the black vote. And she wins the black vote, she's good. You know what I'm saying? If she could get, because I feel like and I said this in my 2019, 2000s year in review video. That's right there on the introduction of my channel. What caused Hillary Clinton in 2016, I don't believe in any Russian collusion. I think that was all bullshit, right? But what caused her in 2016 was her inability to connect with the base that Barack Obama had built, that coalition that Barack Obama built in 2008 and 2012, respectively. Lisa says I should do a video on Project 25. You sent me a lot of information, Lisa, on Project 25. I read through it briefly, but I would have to read through it more extensively in order to do a video on it properly, to be honest with you. I've read some of the things about it, but I haven't read the whole entire thing thoroughly enough to be able to really address it accurately like I would want to. But I am going to do that. Thanks for the idea. Now, I want to touch on history. You know, Lisa said don't do it, but I'm doing it. You know, I can't resist, guys. This time that we're living in right now is so reminiscent of the late 1960s and early 1970s. It's not even funny. Let's look at the historical parallels. A president gets shot. A presidential nominee got shot. Who was that presidential nominee that got shot in 1968? Robert F. Kennedy Sr. Right there by Sirhan Sirhan. Also in 1968, President Lyndon Johnson refuses to seek his party's nomination for President of the United States. And what does Lyndon Johnson have in common with Joe Biden? Well, both were vice presidents under hugely popular presidents, JFK and Obama, respectively. Both found themselves in highly unpopular international conflicts that they just could not get out of. And it distracted them from their domestic initiative. And both men faced tremendous opposition from within their own party, from the activist wing of their own party, because of these wars. Johnson was faced with campus protests against Vietnam on college campuses, Columbia included. Biden is faced with that with regards to Gaza. So 1968 and 2024 have a lot in common, guys. In fact, the entire late 60s and early 70s have so much in common with the year 1968. An assassination of a nominee, a presidential dropout, of a guy who was a vice president, and a highly unpopular international conflict that is basically a civil war that Americans feel like we should not be involved in, and they don't really understand it. And from what they do understand it, they can't tell who's the good guys and who's the bad guys. Will cost the president, even though that president did a lot of great things on the domestic front, especially for the African American community that is in high racial unrest like they were in the 1960s. President Johnson did the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. Biden, he didn't pass any landmark legislation for African Americans like he should have in the wake of the Black Lives Matter riots when he got into office, right? But like you said with Ketanji Brown Jackson and with Kamala Harris, he did the best he could. Faced against them, Hubert Humphreys, who was Johnson's vice president, highly unpopular, so unpopular with the Democratic base at that time that it caused a riot in Chicago at the Democratic National Convention in 1968. And we talked about it in the movie The Chicago 7, right here on this channel, in the movie review section. And nobody thought, everybody in New York and California, even though he was from California, nobody thought that Richard Nixon could win the election. Everybody thought, even though Johnson dropped out, Hubert Humphreys had it in the bag, right? He was going to win. Nobody thought Nixon. To the shock of everybody, Nixon, a guy who was the vice president of Dwight D. Eisenhower before that, and who lost the election in 1960 to Kennedy, got in. But people to this day, American historians, still debate if Robert Kennedy Sr. never got shot, would he have won the presidency that year? And Nixon would not have won, and would have saved us a whole lot of embarrassment with Watergate. We don't know. People look at the Columbia riots and they see Kent State. People look at the Columbia riots and they see the Columbia riots of 1968 on college campuses. People look at RFK's assassination and Trump's assassination attempt, similar. Even though one died and one didn't. So you see so many parallels to what's been going on. It's just amazing to me. You could look at Biden like an LBJ because, like I said, he was the vice president to a president that was energetic, to a president that was young, to a president that symbolized youth over old school establishment, the way that Obama did when he came in after Bush, right? And Lisa says, like history repeating itself. And Kennedy, who many people compared to Obama, even me when Obama first got in, was like Obama, breaking down ethnic stereotypes. Prior to Kennedy, there had never been a Catholic in office in the United States ever before. He was the first. And Catholics in this nation faced tremendous discrimination when they first started to get to this country in the 1830s due to the Irish potato famine in their country. And by the time Kennedy became president in 1960, people were still questioning, could a Catholic really be the president of the United States? Or would that put the United States separation of church and state at risk? Because would it put them under the jurisdiction of the Pope in Rome? And it didn't, but to some people, to a lot of people, just like Obama, Kennedy symbolized a changing of the guard. And his president was somebody way more conservative than he, just like Biden. He was way more conservative than Obama. Biden was from Delaware, right? And a conservative Democrat. Then Kennedy gets assassinated, and Johnson comes in. He does an amazing job, has an amazing election in 1964. Landslide, only a couple of states go for his opponent, Barry Goldwater. But by 1968, he is where he is. The tables have completely turned. Look at the job that Biden did in 2020 compared to where he is now, 4 years later. So there you have it, guys. We like living in a simulation of the 1960s again in the 2020s. The only difference is there was no thought. Now, if you want to go even deeper and you want to include 1971 and 1972, we could talk about the assassination attempt on George Wallace, which closely parallels Trump's as well. George Wallace was a segregationist candidate. He started off as the segregationist governor of Alabama. He stood in front of school doors during the integration of schools in Alabama, colleges in Alabama, and 1964, Lisa. What? Segregation as far as schools, 1954, with Brown versus the Board of Ed. But segregation as a whole, like bathrooms, water fountains, 1964, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Another parallel. Okay, let's go back to Wallace. Okay, Wallace, his slogan was segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. He was a demagogue. He was on the level with like Trump. He was very vitriolic, very racist, very outright racist. Some would say he orchestrated the bombing of that Birmingham church that killed 4 little girls in 1963, right? Some would say that. Most people would say that now. Then in 1972, he gets shot. An assassination attempt is on his life by a crazy man named Arthur Butler, who wants to make a name for himself and is a crazy loner. Now, just like Trump, Wallace doesn't die, but he continues to run for president once again and never wins. So here's another crazy example. couple of weeks ago, and I didn't talk about it on the channel, but probably I should have. Russia was found having military encampments of missiles on the coast of Cuba, collaborating with the Cuban government to set up missiles to strike the United States. Now, if that doesn't remind you of the Cuban Missile Crisis of the early 1960s, I don't know what does. Once again, another example of the 2020s being in the political world nearly identical to the 1960s. Yeah, I'll send you the article in your inbox, please. Hold on. Yeah, at least I didn't talk about that because, but when I heard about it, I'm like, oh, wow, that's very crazy. That's very reminiscent of 1962 and the Cuban Missile Crisis. I'm telling you, a lot of history is repeating itself. A lot of history. Russia is coming back. Someone other than the outside world, like computers and social media, a person that lived back then wouldn't have no problem recognizing the political landscape from back then as being identical or similar to the political landscape of those days. Russia is an enemy. China is an enemy still. uh, there's war in Israel. Israel is trying to capture other territories like it did in the Six-Day War in 1967. The president just resigned. One nominee got almost assassinated. And there's riots on college campuses over an unpopular military conflict as well as high racial conflict in the streets. I mean, what's next? The music isn't as good though. The music isn't as good, but hey, you can't have everything the same, right? more things change, the more they stay the same. Who would have thought? I know me as a kid, I would have never thought. Growing up in the 90s, I would have never thought that Russia would be a threat to us ever again. Because Russia completely collapsed in the 1990s as a superpower and was like a third world country. I thought they would never regain footing. Putin comes along in the late 2000s, mid 2000s, and he rebuilds Russia over. He rebuilds Russia back to where it was, and now they're back to threatening us again. Life is crazy, man. That's why I like to study history, because you see these different parallels from the way things were to the way things are. Especially with the 60s. All we're missing now on the black front is charismatic black leaders like we had in the 1960s, Medgar Evers and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. We don't have that. You know what I'm saying? That's the only thing we are missing. But maybe it's good we don't, because those men were assassinated. He says, bring up a good point. Biden dropping out says is giving his cause of whatever reason, gives the next generation people a chance. Yeah, that could be the next amendment, Lisa. And I think it has to be. I think it's a must. Because, come on, him being allowed to run. I mean, even Ronald Reagan's faculties started to fail him in the middle of his second term. He was reelected in 1984. The Iran-Contra thing happened around 85, 86. And during the hearings for the Iran-Contra situation, he said, and I quote, "I cannot recall." Come to find out later, he had early onset Alzheimer's. So, yeah, I did. Do I think Biden dropping out because of whatever reason gives the next people the chance to give a limit to the age of when a president can run? Yeah. And I said, yeah, I think you do. It does. Lisa's saying it's not a trust issue with Biden. She just doesn't think it's fair. Oh, that Trump. Oh, okay, I understand what she's saying. Uh, she's saying that Trump is not that much younger than Biden. Yeah, but Trump, his mind is all there. He's not. I mean, I know Candace Owens made fun of it, but if you look at the way that First Lady Jill Biden, yeah, okay. Lisa says it's not just Biden's age, but Trump's age as well, because he's not that far from Biden age-wise. Yeah, he's not. They're, but his faculties are still there. When Joe Biden was giving Joe Biden props for the debate, he was saying, she was talking to him like he was a child. You did good, Joe. You answered all the questions. like she was talking to him like he was either a man with an adult with special needs or a kid. You know, you did good. You answered all the questions. Like, of course I answered. Of course he answered all the questions. He's a nominee. Stop talking to him like he's a freaking. I'm not going to use the R word, but a child. Put it, you know, you know, you did good. You answered all the questions. I mean, really, like, I think, or at least that's what I think about 50, 55, 56. Nah, let me take that back. 60. 60. Yeah, I know. They should lower the minimum. 35 ain't what 35 used to be. At least lower the minimum to 25. And then push the maximum up to 60. And people are living longer, so you have to adjust appropriately. When these age limits were put in place, like the minimum age limit, shit, 35 was like fucking 60. In the 18th century, okay, 65, he says, is the retirement age. Yeah, but my point is, these, who cares about college least? I'm going back to college, and I'm freaking in my late 30s. You know, people go back to college any age. How about measuring it not by age, but by experience in office? Years in office. If you're 35, like, make it so that you have to have climbed the ladder. You have to have been in the Senate somehow. You have to have been in government for a number of years in order just to get there, right? You can't just be any guy off the street or any woman off the street. Hey, I'm going to run for president. No, you have to. It's like, make it like baseball, right? Or like WWE. A WWE person can't be a WWE person until they've been through NXT. A baseball player can't be through baseball till they've been through the minor leagues first, no matter who they are. Like, they have to go through the system of earning that position, earning that top slot, paying their political dues. Physical age doesn't matter. Yeah, I know they don't. That's why I changed that comment. I said, rather than make it about age, make it about, but there should be age limits. You should not be in there at 65, past 65. But as far as age minimums, it should be based on experience, not age. Because if we're not careful, shit, he's already making speeches at the RNC. Hulk Hogan could be the next president after Trump. he could decide, you know what, I like the response I got from the political crowd, and run up there and be like, what you gonna do when Hulk Hogan runs wild on you as president, brother, and no political experience whatsoever. So it has to be a system based on you have to enter the Senate first. You have to hold at least two political offices first in order to get even to that spot. Like I said, just like they do in baseball. They don't allow any person off the street to become a major league baseball player. It doesn't work like that. You got to go through the minor leagues first, and then you'll get there. This idea that we're a citizen democracy and anybody could be it, that's what fucks the country up, because then you get people like Trump, and you get, no lie, people like the Squad, some of them, that have no idea. They go into Washington like kids being thrown in the pool not knowing how to swim without swimmies on. And they think Washington is just a game, and they're completely overwhelmed when they get in, and they don't know what laws to pass and what not to pass. No political knowledge, no political experience, but they think they can do it all. But people don't like that in general. People like, ever since Trump, people frown on, oh, he's been in office for years and years, or she's been there for 5, 6 years. She's held several positions in government. She's a Washington insider. We want a Washington outsider. Okay, so you're basically saying you want somebody that doesn't know what he or she's doing. You want an AOC, or you want a Trump. That's what you want. Somebody off the street that there was a reality TV show star or a bartender before they became a politician. That's what you want? Then you deserve the government you get, if that's what you want. See, because what people like AOC and Trump do is they're like me. They're casual observers. They watch the news and they think they know everything. I'll admit, I don't know how things run. I'm only talking about it from an outsider's perspective. I don't know the nuts and bolts of it. I don't know how to get things done, laws passed. I know how laws get passed as far as the formalities of it through studying government and civics, but I don't know who's asked the kiss. I don't know how to get it actually done. I don't know anything about that. They don't either when they entered into office. And you see the problems they face. So political experience should be tantamount to actual physical age. Is my answer to that. Anyway, guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to see my next video is coming out. Love you guys. Thank you, Lisa, for contributing. And thank you for the information.